From hotspots to hidden gems, it's your guide to LA the unscripted way from Hollywood's famed Roosevelt Hotel. Above Hollywood Boulevard with a bird's eye view of the city we love, we're on the roof of one of Tinseltown's most iconic check-ins, the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. Hi everyone, I'm Dana Devin.
And I'm Doug Kolk, and what better place to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. This iconic destination has been here since 1927.
And it's steeped in star secrets. From Marilyn Monroe living in the hotel to being featured in films like A Star is Born, it's a who's who, what's what, and where's where of endless stories. So let's reveal the Roosevelt the LA unscripted way.
We've had anyone from Marilyn Monroe to Angelina Jolie just recently come here. Charlie's Angels was filmed up there on the rooftop. If you ever saw the movie Catch Me If We Can with Leonardo DiCaprio, that was all shot at the Tropicana pool outside. Room 1010, Reese Witherspoon wins her Oscar that night and she stayed that night. So we call it the Lucky Suite here at the Hollywood Roosevelt. We are located in the heart of Hollywood, across the street from the Chinese Theater and, of course, the El Capitan Theater. So we're a little spoiled here at the Roosevelt.
I've covered plenty of premieres across the street.
Yep.
And most of the time, I see the entire cast walk right over here
Absolutely.
and celebrate after.
We're a little spoiled here at the Roosevelt because a lot of those big premiere parties, they end up here at Blossom.
You talk about the Blossom.
Yep.
The Blossom Room has quite the reputation.
Home to the very first Academy Awards in 1929. That's one of the key places here at the Roosevelt. The Academy Awards were, of course, 15 minutes long. There was a special honor for Mr. Charlie Chaplin that evening in the Blossom Ballroom. Douglas Fairbanks was the MC. Well, we're standing here at the historic lobby at the Hollywood Roosevelt. The historic lobby has recently gone back to its roots. We did a huge renovation in 2020 to bring it back to 1935. She was built by none other than Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, Louis B. Mayer, and of course the great Sid Grauman across the street from the Chinese Theater.
I've also heard that, did Marilyn Monroe live here?
She sure did. We think from 1949 to 1951 in the Cabana area. Her room is 229. And it was a very special place for Marilyn because this is kind of where she gets her big start. So Marilyn comes to the Roosevelt as Norma Jean in 1949, we think. Takes her very first photo shoot out by the pool. And of course, 2 years later, her career just kind of takes off. The Roosevelt is meant to look like a set from a movie. So if you look around, it's a Spanish colonial revival style, right? But she does look very much like a set from a movie. She's gorgeous. She actually went through a huge restoration in 1995. They found the original ceiling, which meant that we were a historic landmark and they couldn't tear us down. So here we are 95 years after we were built and we're still standing. The Roosevelt is very unique. It's got 3 restaurants, including one that's open 24 hours. We have 7 lounges here, including a bowling alley upstairs, the spare room. It's a vintage bar, so it includes cocktails that we have been serving here at the hotel since 1927.
It seems like there's a real focus on maintaining the reputation of the past.
Now, a lot of what we do here at the hotel is celebrate the history of the hotel. The Hollywood Chamber of Commerce has been such a huge part of our history here at the Roosevelt. She was built to entertain and to house a lot of these big events, and thanks to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, we were able to accomplish that, right?
Here we are inside the Blossom Ballroom. And this place isn't just magical, it's musical. You know, back in 2007, Prince played 7 intimate nights in this hotel's Blossom Ballroom. Only 200 to 300 seats a show, so people were so close, they said you could see the sweat on his strings.
Oh my God, what an event. Okay, here's a shocker though. Prince doesn't have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame yet. So let's say it together. Who knew?
The Hollywood Walk of Fame is really the Walk of Dreams. So many people who come here and they get so excited to see those stars. And we do star ceremonies and you hear the stars tell how they made it, and it's amazing how many of our celebrities came here as a child and walked the Walk of Fame and said, someday I'm going to have a star. And we want to make Hollywood match that dream.
The Walk of Fame is one of the most popular tourist attractions in Los Angeles.
How many people come each year?
We get about 10 million people a year visiting. The Hollywood Walk of Fame is 2.5 miles long. It starts at La Brea and ends at Gower, but it's also on Vine Street from Sunset to Yucca.
What is the most popular star, do you think?
Marilyn Monroe, which is in front of McDonald's, James Dean, who's on Vine Street, and Johnny Depp. We used to have an office above his star, and if I could get $1 for each photo taken, I'd be rich. The first stars were Dorothy Dandridge, Anna Mae Wong, Dolores Del Rio, and Mae West.
How did the Walk of Fame get started?
A gentleman named E.M. Stewart and Harry Sugarman got together, and the rumor is they were sitting at a dining room table. They're chamber executives, and they said, these people want to see the stars, so let's create some stars.
Hollywood Walk of Fame!
Can you tell me about the process to get a Hollywood star?
Anybody can nominate a celebrity with their written permission. It's usually studios, record labels, family members, management who can nominate somebody. When Liza Minnelli was nominated, she was nominated by her fans and she was selected. So they started raising money by having a movie night at somebody's house, and they would charge entry fee and they would sell baked goods, and that's how her star was paid for.
There would be no Hollywood Walk of Fame if it weren't for the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, which developed the concept, worked with the city to make it happen, and has administered it for over 60 years, and on and on.
I like to put people together, family members. Betty White, her star is next to Alan Ludden, her husband, her beloved husband. She adored him. And Drew Barrymore is near at the Chinese Theater area, and her family is all around that block, her family members. I have Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins together, but then they broke up.
I'll bet when Betty White turns 100 in January, you're going to see quite the tribute on her star.
And she deserves it. We love Betty.
For all the haps in Hollywood, make sure to follow our Chamber of Commerce on social and show them big love for its centennial celebration.
When we come back, climb into a booth for a steak and a martini the Musso and Frank's way. Find out who really runs Hollywood's coolest events and fly over the most famous landmark in Hollywood that almost lost its footing. LA Unscripted's party just getting started. It's a rager from the Roosevelt. Welcome back to LA Unscripted from the iconic Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. So this mirror that Doug is preening in front of, it isn't just any mirror. This is actually Marilyn Monroe's mirror, taken from her hotel room when the star lived here in room 229.
No wonder why we look so good.
We look good.
And speaking of old Hollywood, rumor has it that this hotel might have some spirited guests.
Ooh.
Perhaps the ghost of Mary Pickford is flying around there.
We'd like to think there's certain energy in that room. I mean, it's 95 years of history here at the Roosevelt. And, you know, you have to remember there was, the Blossom was synonymous with a lot of the big jazz nights, and the big bands would perform in there. So I like to think that there's still folks having a good time and dancing in there and having a martini or two.
Now, in honor of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce celebrating its 100th anniversary, we're taking you inside Tinseltown's classic go-tos.
And just down the street from where we're standing is the Steak and Chop House, where you can almost still smell Humphrey Bogart's cigar. Almost. Originally opened for business in 1919, Musso and Frank's is more than a restaurant. It's a trip back in time, served with an icy cold martini.
Everybody who's been in Hollywood has come through this restaurant at some point in time. Guys like Keith Richards with the Rolling Stones, whenever they come through LA, when he comes in, he likes to click his heels like Dorothy and say, "I'm home." Gore Vidal would always say, stepping into Musso's is like stepping into a warm bath. The restaurant has been in 4 generations. I'm the 4th generation operator. My great-grandfather had it from 1927 until he passed away in 1974. Then he left it to his only child, my grandmother. In 1919, when Musso's opened, Hollywood Boulevard was a dirt road. Charlie Chaplin used to race his horse from his studio down in La Brea with whoever the unlucky competitor was. Loser would have to buy lunch, and he would tie his horse up out in front of the restaurant on Hollywood Boulevard to come in and eat lunch. And there's actually only one booth in the whole restaurant that has a window, and it's now known as the Charlie Chaplin booth. It's table 101. It's in the corner of the old room, and it's probably the most requested booth in the whole restaurant now. This room we call the old room, and it is the oldest room here at Musso's. And everything in here is original to 1934, including the wallpaper, the wood paneling on the walls. We will never change the wallpaper in this room. You got Humphrey Bogart's cigar smoke up there. Think about all the stories that have been told under the wallpaper.
This right here is probably one of the biggest things people talk about in this restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the grill, this was original from 1934. This is, when we built this dining room and this grill, this is when we really truly became a grill house. Mm-hmm. And everything on here is original from 1934. The steel grate itself we've been cooking on for probably 44 years. So
right.
The seasoning on it is just so rich, and you really can't beat a steak off that grill. We are famous for our steaks and chops. Some of the key items that are most noticeable for their history would be, say, Charlie Chaplin's favorite, lamb kidneys and bacon. Still on the menu, will never leave the menu. There's chicken pot pie, which is the original recipe from the early 1920s. Not a thing has been touched on that recipe till today. And so we've got a lot to offer as far as respecting that old history of Hollywood and bringing that history with us into the future. This is part of the expansion. This is the real intimate private dining room that we just added.
And it's also kind of a wine room?
It is, yeah. Everything in here is temperature controlled. So this is where we'll put our real high profile wines, and then you can come in and have a meal amongst all the wine. There's a lot of history here with the wines, and so you can sit here and soak in the history of Musso's and the wine. During our 100th anniversary, the Hollywood Chamber was gracious enough to award us with the Award of Excellence on the Hollywood Boulevard. And so Musso's is the only restaurant in LA, or actually anywhere, that has its own award of excellence on the boulevard. The Hollywood Chamber is coming up on its 100th anniversary, and throughout the century, the Hollywood Chamber has been very instrumental in various aspects of how we do business and how we look at the community and how we engage with the community. It's an absolute true statement to say that Musso's, the Hollywood Chamber, and Hollywood as a region grew up together.
Dana, I think I could go for a porterhouse right now.
I'm always into a steak, and you know me, I'm always craving a martini. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, come on. And LA Unscripted will be right back with more from the famed Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel and the most famous sign in all of California and how it almost lost its ending. Plus, we'll show you some trends with benefits and reveal who really runs Hollywood. Welcome back to LA Unscripted from the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. So we made our way outside to the Tropicana pool, and if you look down at the bottom, the floor is actually a mural painted by famed painter David Hockney that's been there since 1988.
And I heard it's valued at $1 million.
What?
I mean, every corner of this place is cooler than the last. Wherever you go to a hotel, you always want to check out the penthouse. There's always a certain lure to it. Talk about it for here.
Well, absolutely. The gable lumbar penthouse here at the Hollywood Roosevelt is on the rooftop of the hotel. So it's a 3-story penthouse, and it's, of course, was home to Mr. Clark Gable and Carol Lombard. This was their love nest back in the 20s. A little scandalous because they were both married to other people at the time. Ooh. But it had a very happy ending. They did end up together. The Gable Lombard penthouse has, of course, been home to other big celebrities like Prince. He lived there for a very short time when he was doing sold-out shows here in Hollywood. You might have seen it recently on A Star is Born with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. When you talk about the amenities and what this place has to offer, it's not just for the guests. Absolutely not. We do a lot of things, as I was telling you, the Roosevelt's synonymous with the jazz era. So we brought back jazz to the Roosevelt here in our historic lobby. We have a French chanteuse that performs here on weekends, and a jazz trio that performs here as well. Again, to kind of tie in that part of history that was so wonderful here in the 20s and 30s here at the Roosevelt.
Okay, we're here in Teddy's. We're right behind me. They have $1 million worth of Swarovski crystals in that chandelier.
That is unreal.
It's unbelievable.
And this hotel even has a theater the Roosevelt Theater that hosts a punk cabaret show called On the Fringe.
Only in Hollywood, Doug. All right, now if you want something done in this part of town, then you need to check in with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. They're about to celebrate their 100th anniversary. From where to go and what to do, they are the trend with benefits that makes every star-studded event come together.
Hollywood Chamber of Commerce has been around for 100 years, supporting businesses in Hollywood.
They were responsible for putting the first seats in at the Hollywood Bowl. They worked to bring the Hollywood Freeway here and to see that there were 8 exits in Hollywood instead of 1. They worked to get the first hospital here. They worked to save the Hollywood sign twice on 2 occasions. Hollywood actually was its own city from 1903 to 1910. In 1903, there were 700 people in the city of Hollywood. The Hollywood Chamber of Commerce was founded 100 years ago in 1921. It was led by Hollywood's leading citizen at that time, C.E. Toberman.
Back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, it was a more glamorous time in Hollywood. A lot of the talent agents were located at Hollywood and Vine in the historic Taft Building, and there's that famed story of Lana Turner getting discovered at Schwab's. Hollywood and Highland, which is now called Ovation and is where the Academy Awards are held, has just a tremendous development, welcomes millions of visitors per year. And then of course we've seen some incredible office developments in the past 10 years with Columbia Square, where Viacom, Fender, and Neuhaus are located. The Hollywood Hills and the Hollywood sign. Runyon Canyon, which is walking distance from this location, is one of the most sought after destinations for tourists and for residents alike. There's quite a few rooftop bars that are being developed as part of our new hotels. We have the Tommy, the Thompson, the Godfrey. It's the Hollywood dream.
Like, where would you like to see Hollywood go in the future?
I think we'd like to support the existing businesses here and help them grow. Housing, we need retail, we need amenities, and of course we need office and places for content to be created. And that's the kind of development we really need to see in the next 10 years to keep Hollywood at the forefront of the entertainment industry.
And one of the main reasons we can thank the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce is the Hollywood sign that still stands 45 feet high.
It really is so iconic, and no wonder it attracts millions of visitors each year. But here's what you may not know: the real story behind the sign.
You know, it's a penultimate symbol of Southern California. They could do beaches, but there are beaches everywhere. We have nice architectural buildings, but there's other buildings that are just as significant elsewhere. But the one symbol that nobody else has is that Hollywood sign. If you think about it, there would be no Hollywood sign if it weren't for the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. So the Hollywood sign started as a promotion for a real estate development. The development was called Hollywood Land. It was built by a consortium of LA's leading citizens, including the Chandlers from the LA Times. As part of it, they put this big sign on the hill that said Hollywood Land. So by the 1940s, it was in pretty bad shape. And in fact, in 1948, there was a windstorm that blew down the H. And the residents started complaining to the city, this thing is a disgrace, it's an embarrassment, tear it down. So the city was planning to tear down the Hollywood sign, at which time the Chamber stepped forward and said, well, we think it should be saved, and the Chamber's willing to rebuild it if the city will allow us. The city said, okay, the Chamber can rebuild the sign, but you've got to take off the land and just says Hollywood. By about 1978, the first O in Hollywood, the top half had blown down, and the second O had completely fallen down. Again, the Chamber stepped forward and said to the city, we'd like to raise the money and completely rebuild it and re-engineer it to modern standards so it's going to last this time. They did several things to raise the money. They had tried to find sponsors for the letters. Alice Cooper was the first sponsor, and the last letter was sponsored by Groucho Marx. But The biggest campaign contribution came through Hugh Hefner. He held a gala at the Playboy Mansion, and I think it was $150 a plate, and they raised over $40,000 from that towards the effort. And at that time, the Chamber formed the Hollywood Sign Trust to help maintain it going forward. So that sign's in great shape today. They continually monitor it to be sure it's seismically safe, even though it's fallen down in numerous movies. It has been a tremendous advertising vehicle for Los Angeles, Hollywood, and Southern California for 100 years.
Well, we've had a wonderful stay here at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. Thank you guys so much for letting us go off script to some of our favorite landmarks.
And happy 100th to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for supporting the city we love so much.
Where will we be next? If it's a hotspot or a hidden gem, we'll be there the LA Unscripted way. We'll see you next time. Mwah!